Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Mr. B. We have the latest breaking news developing. It appears that the Virginia Supreme Court has struck down the Democrats' redistricting plan that was recently voted on and approved. There was originally hold placed on that plan by, I believe, a district court, and the case got escalated to the Supreme Court. And now it's coming out that the Supreme Court agreed with the ruling from the district court. And now it seems as if it throws things off a bit for the Democrats. Let's go ahead and jump into the news story now. Let's see.
Back now at 10:30 with major breaking news out of the Commonwealth of Virginia, where the Virginia Supreme Court just issued a landmark ruling striking down the voter-approved congressional redistricting plan. That is a major blow to Democrats, not just in Virginia, but across the country. The justices ruled that the legislative process used to advance the proposal violated the state constitution. Let's learn a little more about the process. I want to bring in Virginia Public Radio reporter Michael Pope. He's covered this extensively. Michael, I appreciate you joining us this morning. Let's start with what's happening right now and the immediate impact when it comes to the midterms.
Yeah, well, the immediate impact is that Virginia's congressional map, the one that we've got right now, as opposed to the new one, is in effect. The majority of the justices ruled they validated this statewide referendum for the new map. So take that referendum and throw it into the garbage can for now. Worth noting that just a few minutes ago, right before we came on air, Attorney General Jay Jones issued a statement saying that he disagreed with the ruling of the court, saying that it disavowed the plain language of the Constitution. So he's disagreeing with the logic behind what the court did. He also said that he would be pursuing every legal pathway that is available to them. Unclear what that is at this point. I mean, the Supreme Court of Virginia is the highest court in the land, and if, in terms of Virginia, and so it seems doubtful they could make a federal case out of this, and even if they did, they could take that to the Republican-controlled Supreme Court. So seems unlikely that they would have many legal pathways at this point. So for now, the important news here is that the referendum has been invalidated. It no longer will take effect, and these new constitutional boundaries that were supposedly 10-1, throw those in the garbage can, because Virginia is keeping its current congressional map.
So two things at play here, Michael, that I see. One is what you just laid out very eloquently. And for Democrats, it's a huge blow because they were using this to potentially gain up to 4 congressional seats. And in midterms, that could mean the sway of the balance of power when it comes to the entire country's representation in Congress. The second thing is, how do voters in Virginia feel? They were the ones that turned out in pretty good numbers to vote on this, whether they were voting in favor of it or voting against it. And now it seems like that didn't even make a difference at all.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be really upset that their vote is being cast aside here. It was a majority of voters that approved of the amendment, and the aim of the amendment was pretty explicit, to unseat 4 Republican members of Congress. You had a majority of people voting in favor of this obviously on its face partisan redrawing, gerrymandering of the congressional districts. A majority of voters approved of that. A slim majority, but a majority nonetheless. And so I think there probably is going to be a lot of upset voters here about this ruling. Worth pointing out some of the logic here. So one of the main reasons this thing has been cast aside is because of a legal debate over what it means to have an election. So the Virginia Constitution actually lays out a process for how to pass a constitutional amendment. So the process is really clear in the Constitution. The General Assembly has to approve it once. This is the first approval from the General Assembly. Then there has to be an election intervening. So the General Assembly passes it once, then there's an election. Then the General Assembly, the next General Assembly after the election, has to approve it again. So approval once, then an election, approval again, then it goes to voters. The problem is the Democrats sort of sprung this last minute and passed the first version of this on October 31st, Halloween. And so the problem is early voting had already started. More than 1 million votes had already been cast when the General Assembly passed this the first time. So the legal question for the Supreme Court was this: was the election a one-day thing? In which case the Democrats had a solid argument here. They passed it, then there was the one-day election, then they passed it again. The problem that they ran into from the Supreme Court is the court ruled that the election was a cumulative process, and those 45 days of early voting constituted an election. So if you cast your ballot on the first day, that was essentially the election.
So it sounds to me like what the ruling was, the Supreme Court was based on the procedure. It was a procedural issue. It was not necessarily had to do with the vote itself. It was just that the vote occurred. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the process is really important because the Constitution lays out a process. If the Democrats had passed this constitutional amendment, if the General Assembly, the Democrat-led General Assembly, had passed this constitutional amendment before early voting started, they would have been in the clear. They wouldn't have had a problem. But they didn't do that. They decided that strategically they would wait until the last minute, and they had an opportunity when there was a special session about the budget in October, when early voting had already started, and that's when they decided to pass it. So they procedurally, they screwed up.
So and that's to my next question. I have two more questions. I want to try to get through them quickly. One, leading up to this election, when Virginia voters turned out at the polls en masse, we had reported this was a chance that this could happen. You had reported there was a chance that this could happen. Did no one that proposed this this particular vote realize that this was a chance? My question is, why would they push this through? Is it just in the hope that no one would notice, for lack of a better way of saying it?
If my goal was to lose my embarrassing gut and get ripped in 2026, and I had a crazy business schedule, I do these.
Well, I mean, the Democrats did have a legal argument, which was that the election was a one-day event. And so they knew that there would be legal challenges, but they felt like they had a strong legal argument that they could present to the Supreme Court. And as it turns out, they were wrong.
All right, one more question for you, but first I want to get to, you mentioned earlier the statement from Jay Jones, the Attorney General in Virginia. I just want to let people know what he had to say. He said, today the Supreme Court of Virginia has chosen to put politics over the rule of law by issuing a ruling that overturns the April 21st special election on redistricting. This decision silences the voices of the millions of Virginians who cast their ballots in every corner of the Commonwealth, and it fuels the growing fears across our nation about the state of our democracy. End quote. That from Attorney General Jay Jones. So here's my last question to you. Aside from, like you said, taking it to a national Supreme Court, which doesn't seem on the surface like it would make any decision other than what the Virginia Supreme Court said, can they take this back to the people? I know you can't do it before the midterms now, but is this something that could be revisited still in the future? Or is this because it was procedural, or is this done?
I would say it's done. I mean, if the question is, could there be another vote on a constitutional amendment? The answer is yes. But the problem is then you got to run into the same procedural hurdles here, which is the General Assembly has to pass it once, then there has to be an election intervening, and then the General Assembly has to pass it again, and then it goes to voters. So sure, yeah, you could begin that process now, but that would be years down the line that the voters would approve that.
All right. So there you go. As of now, the Virginia Supreme Court speaking louder than the voters in this particular case. Michael Pope, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. And every other time you've joined us in the past, we certainly do appreciate it. I know you have a busy day ahead of you, and we'll let you get back to your day job. But thanks so much for joining us here on Fox 5.
All right. There you have it. The courts have spoken. Now, the Democrats did try to cram this down before the midterms, and unfortunately, they didn't follow the procedures that was laid out by the Virginia Supreme Court, or by the state, and unfortunately, because they made some procedural errors, it meant that the vote that was taken was invalid and therefore got struck down. So it was struck down by the district court. Then when it escalated to the Supreme Court, they agreed with the district court's ruling, which means now the map stays the same, and the Democrats don't stand to gain any new seats from the state of Virginia. It is true, if they do escalate it to the federal level, it would get escalated to the Supreme Court of the land, which is majority controlled by Republicans who are probably unlikely to overturn the decision made in Virginia. So therefore, it looks like their efforts are dead in the water. Now, this could set the precedence for other states who may try to do something similar with the hopes of getting votes in time. We don't know if those states' rules kind of align with the rules in Virginia, but it is, not looking good for Democrats with regards to picking up new seats from this standpoint. That being said, I believe the Democrats have more seats in Virginia anyway. I think they got 5. It's a 6-5 breakdown where they have 6 representatives and 5 Republican representatives. So now the question is, will they be able to keep those seats in their areas? Probably, likely, but we'll see. We'll see what happens next. Thank you again for joining us for this breaking news. If you're not connected to the channel, please feel free to connect to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below, and also weigh in. What do you think about this ruling? What do you think the midterms will look like as a result of this ruling? And, what's your overall thoughts on the whole thing? All right. Thank you again. Again, it's Mr. B signing out.